Welcome to the second part of Donald Ross, where we're going to look closer at Pinehurst number 2 and some of his other designs and show really why people like Donald Ross golf courses so much. Some of that is the subtle details around the green. Balance. Shorter holes have more difficult hazards around the green. A great example is the third hole at Pinehurst number 2 of that. Very short. Par 4, where John Daly can make 3 one day and 8 the next. Relative difficulty and then tempo, a mixture of short holes to long holes. Ross would like to say the first hole is like a friendly handshake, an easy hole, leading you in. Even the first hole at number 2 is like that, but even more so the first hole at the Pinehurst Elks is a great, easy par 4, and then the Elks kind of finishes with a nice little tempo of harder holes at the end. Bunkers that look natural, and probably one of the main points, that's why it's in bold here, is easy bogey, hard par. On a Ross course, an unskilled golfer, a high handicap golfer, is going to shoot about what they always shoot. But if you're going for par, there's pits and obstacles on the greens and around the greens that will make that more difficult. A poor golfer is going to do poorly in those areas whether there's difficulty there or not. So it brings the bad golfer closer to the good golfer, which is exactly the opposite of what happens in our next group when we talk about Oakmont and the penal school of design. The other thing that I really like, which I think came from one of the golf courses near where Donald Ross grew up, is on most Donald Ross golf courses, the par 3s all go in a different direction. Pinehurst number 2 is a great example of that. So you can see at Pinehurst number 2, the 6th hole is a very difficult. 6th hole is a very difficult par 3, long, narrow, so that goes this direction. The next par 3 is 9, which comes back in this direction. And then we have 17, which goes back this way, and 15, which goes this way. So you can see, except for the little artifacts there, the 4 different directions. And I have a little theory about that. One of the golf courses that I visited when I went to Scotland is 12 miles north of Dornoch, so we know Donald Ross played it. It was designed by James Braid, one of the triumphant. Great big hands. He went up there, laid the golf course out, and then went back and one day played it. But what James Braid did is turn 2 holes. It's a classic links golf course. It goes out to 9 and back, and it's magnificent. The ocean is here. The 9th hole is one of the most beautiful holes I've ever seen. But Braid turns the par 3s. So 18's a par 3, 9's a par 3, 6 is a par 3, and 13 is a par 3. So the par 3s all go in different directions, and this is something that was one of the first places this was ever done. And you can imagine that in a place where you have prevailing strong winds, that allows you to play a shot into the wind, a shot out of the wind, and 2 different crosswind shots each time. So adding interest to what was a simple design on a golf course that Donald Ross played, and I think he latched on to that idea at Brora. This is kind of messed up with this picture here, but Brora is a magnificent, this golf hole here, this is the 13th one that I showed you, and this beautiful little creek that runs through the golf course crystal clear, beautiful water. Actually, the water flows out of the distillery up at the top where they make the Klein Leash, and that's as beautiful as Pebble Beach or anywhere else in the world. And it reminded me, when I played it, of this hole. This is a hole at Pine Needles. This is prep for the U.S. Open, and in similar design, a Ross hole like the braid hole at Aurora. Another thing that Ross did, which was more evident before they redid Pine Needles, but this bunker here that goes along the front of the 16th looks like it's right up near the front of the green. However, when you look behind, there was all this space that it's not. So many shots will land in here and stop short of the hole. This is a little bit of trickery, building the face of that bunker up, but it also is a function of the shot required. Back when these golf courses were designed, they were maintained much harder with less turf grass, and a mashie wouldn't hold on these greens, so you would hit a club that would come in, roll here, and then roll up onto the green. So a person that played away from it is going to mess with the bunker that's on this side that's very deep. So a little bit of trickery in optical illusions used by Ross on the 16th here at Pine Needles, and also the second hole at number 2 is a great example of that. And there is the yardage book before the recent redo of Pine Needles. And again, separating that hazard from the front of the green, allowing a bump and run or a 5-iron type shot to roll, not hold. Many options. One of the beauties of Donald Ross and Pinehurst number 2 is you can hit most any club from chipping around the greens. But if you take your lob wedge and halfway through the backswing you decide maybe you should have taken a putter, that definitely guarantees a bad shot. And one of the criticisms from the 99 Open was that the surrounds were maintained too perfect. So the pros all chose to take putters for all of their chips because the grass was mowed so tight and so firm. So at the next Open, the height of cut was raised there, and then we saw them hitting all different shots. So it was not as easy a decision for the pro golfer, and giving them non-easy decisions makes the golf course much more difficult. Deep bunkers with convex faces. This is a function of also the era when they were made. This is something that's not done easily with the D4 bulldozer. This is handwork. Bunkers balanced with mounds on the other side, and oftentimes the mounds will short side you and put you in a much more difficult position where you have a good chance of hitting it back into the bunker on the other side. So sometimes the mound is the more important hazard than the bunker. A great example of this convex facing is the 17th hole, a par 3, second to last hole at Pinehurst number 2. And you have to hit a shot up over that convex face. It's not meant to be perfectly green. You know, this is how it's supposed to look. It's not supposed to be perfectly green and pristine. It's supposed to look a little rough around the edges. Balls are not supposed to stop here. They're supposed to roll back into this deep bunker to give a challenging shot. So here are some drawings for Cape Fear Country Club. You can see bunkers with mounds. This is before Ross used contour maps, but you can definitely read elevation from his designs. And then here's some of his writing on the side, and then these were typed by his associates. And this is all there was for a design. So some cross sections of the green, but very simple, crude drawings. A lot of the work was done really by hand by his people in the field. Again, convex shots. When you have a golf shot from here, probably Paul Jett says play the 6-iron, which is a pretty good shot. You play 6-iron into here and it bumps up. But you could play a lob wedge. You can putt. There's all kinds of different methods to play these shots. Lots of topography. The golf courses have been probed and picked and topographical mapped and put into computers for video games. One of the wonderful things about Pinehurst Number 2 is when you play it with Payne Stewart and John Daly and all the people who've played it before. So that's very valuable, and it assures Pinehurst Number 2 of all the tee times filling up. And that's the second hole in this area here is an optical illusion. This bunker from the fairway shot looks like it guards the green. And also, depending on the flag, on which side of the hole it's on, is you want to leave your iron shot in from that side. So Pinehurst Number 2 plays different, particularly how the golf course is set up. And then the third hole is probably one of my most favorite holes. John Daly made 3 there on Thursday. They can drive. He can drive all the way down on the green if he wanted to. But most of the players will use an iron or a short wood, put it in this area and hit an iron onto the screen. Very, very difficult bunkering on this third hole. You can see this is the shot you might face, and if you miss that shot, either over or in front, even this front, everything here is going to roll down into this bunker. Anything long is going to roll off and be a very difficult shot that might throw you back into the bunker. So although it's a short hole, the shot value is very high, and we're going to talk about shot values quite a bit later, but that's one thing Ross is very good at. If the hole's very long, it's generally not as difficult to round the green as the short hole. And then probably one of the most difficult holes, this is a non-characteristic Ross hole because the miss is long and right. All the pros hit their second shot up here, chip back on. You do not want to be down in this area. In fact, all the front of the screen is pretty much a false front because all the balls will come back down off of it. So uses the lay of the land for this par 4.5, basically, even for the best fields in the world. And there's a look at it. So not a lot of bunkers in the fairway. If you have to hit a long drive, he gives you a chance to hit it. But at 426 yards, even from the whites, I don't have in my bag what it takes to miss here, which is the optimum miss. So very difficult hole. Ross really didn't put water as a design element very much. On number 2, the 16th hole had some water because it was a wet area and they finally just dug it. Drainage is a huge part. Basically, to get the water off the golf course, they might dig a pond or to provide irrigation for the turf. Very rarely is it a design element, and some of the golf courses have been redone, that's been changed, and it does change the character quite a bit. One great example of this is Charlotte Country Club. There's a par 3 over water to an island green that just was not something Ross would have done. That is definitely not easy bogey, hard par. And then here's in Donald Ross, drainage, one of the most important things. It's absolutely possible to produce a healthy growth of grass on imperfectly drained soil. So the sandhills were well drained and have served his designs well. In his book, Golf Has Never Failed Me, there's a chapter on drainage, there's a chapter on soil, another chapter on mowing, a chapter on liming, a chapter on seeding, a chapter on sodding, a chapter on how to change cups, a chapter on locating bunkers. So there is our first chapter on design. When I first read this book, I was a turf student at Michigan State, and I wanted to read, well, how do I design golf courses? You know, this is something I want to do. And I read the book. It's like, I know all this stuff. This is all turf stuff. Bunker location was the first thing that was something new from the turf studies that I had. And then he went into irrigation, location of the golf course, soil, again, and then draining bunkers and draining fairways. And there's 5 or 6 chapters on drainage. So drainage is one of the most important things in design. The American Society of Golf Course Architects was founded in 1946. This is their first meeting. Their first meeting was at Pinehurst, right by the Putter Boy. Billy Bell, who we'll talk about from California. Langford, here's Donald Ross right here. Harris, Stanley Thompson, who is going to teach Robert Trent Jones Sr., who's going to be is the youngest of these men, and he's the one that's really going to use this. Is a founding member to launch his career. Soon after 1946, the Depression hits, and very few of these men, if any, I don't think, designed anything after the Depression. They adopted the Ross plaid, which is a hideous red jacket that these guys will wear at all the meetings. And Ross died soon, 2 years after that, so he didn't really live much into the Depression and the hard times that were coming after that. It is interesting to note that Pinehurst printed its own money during the Depression. People were paid in that money, and they could use that money at the company store. So Pinehurst had its own little economy where they put people to work to try to keep the country and try to keep the city moving. Here's a comment from Ron Whitten, who wrote the book that I used for the framework of this course. His sites almost always put a premium on short recovery shots. So again, allowing the bad golfer to fix his messes, to get back in, to stay in the match, not separating the good golfer from the bad golfer, like some other schools of design. And there's old Donald, and he was a pretty good golfer too. So he and his brother both good golfers, and definitely something you should do. So for this week, take your time off, take good notes. We're going to have an essay next week that is a compare and contrast this school with Pennsylvania school. But for this week, take some time off and go walk on a golf course and just look at it and think about some of the things that Donald Ross or Ross thought about in the strategy of a Ross golf course. Trees are definitely not a part of that strategy. You can see here Pat O'Brien from the USJ. This was a big tree that used to be right next to the second hole of Pinehurst number 2. And when Pat called Brad Coker after this windstorm, and they said, what trees did you lose? He said, we didn't lose any important trees, Pat. And Pat said, well, it would be impossible to lose any important trees because there aren't any important trees on Pinehurst number 2. So if you get a chance to walk out there, give that one a thought. And this was right on the left-hand side of the second hole as you face the green from the fairway. Another interesting thing, Donald Ross lived right behind the third green. So the third green, the fourth and fifth hole, and the sixth hole were walked by him probably daily with his dog. So those are probably the most tinkered with golf holes in all the United States. When Donald Ross was not picked to build Augusta, Dr. Alistair McKenzie was picked because Bobby Jones went out to Cypress Point and saw that golf course. Donald Ross got a little case of the ass, got upset. He wanted to make his golf course better than Augusta, so he tweaked number 2 to make it for championship play. So it is a little bit different than some of the other Ross courses that were designed more for public play. This course was designed to have championship golf, and does have some more difficult intricacies that allow it to be tricked up and play very well for these U.S. Open, U.S. Amateur tournaments we've had in the last 5 or 6 years. Here's another place, downtown Pinehurst. You might want to pop your head in here, say hi till I go all the way to the back, and there's all kinds of cases and wonderful memorabilia for golf course design. Some of Donald Ross's papers, designs, memorabilia from Pinehurst, so it's a nice place to spend a rainy day if you get some time. Go on in there and walk around. That's fine too if you want to do that instead of play golf. I'll applaud that action. The 17th hole, number 2, very difficult, deep, bunkered par 3 that really has given some of the best golf pros in the country fits, difficulty finishing. Sorry that cut off a little abruptly. I've added a picture here. The 13th at Aurora, that magnificent par 3 going out to the ocean, which should give you some inspiration to get out there and play some golf. No homework this week. Do a little bit of research, and I'm looking forward to next week's discussion of Oakmont.